Hello and welcome to Parentainment. This is Sarah Ripard and today is the 6th of March 2025 and I'm really excited today because I have a dear friend who's coming on to decode some stuff, some gematria, and we're going to get into all of that in a minute. But before we start, I've been off for a while. I just sort of needed to recalibrate and just take a break. So as you can see, if you can see StreamYard, you can see the little logo in the back there. You know, I'm taking a break, recalibrating, seeing what feels right. Needed to just step back a little bit, do work behind the scenes, but not in front of the camera. So welcome wherever you are in the world, whenever you will see this. Again, as I said, my name is Sarah Ripard with Parentainment. And so for those of you who've never heard of us before, just a little bit of background on who we are and what we're doing. So Parentainment is a multimedia platform where we discuss what does it really take to raise healthy, self-regulating humans in our realm today. And because we've shifted so much in this massive shift in our evolution as humans, boy, a lot of stuff has changed, right? And so I had to shift the conversation to more of a spiritual, geopolitical perspective because we are being affected by everything. There is no such thing as just compartmentalized reality. We are all intersecting at different points. And so for me, it was important to bring that into the conversation. So we've been talking about many different topics, whether it's politics, geopolitics, socioeconomics, how we're doing with our mental health, talking about the lies that have been told to us for so long, the really unveiling of this humanity shift and the positive reset of what we're going into. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest. She is quite a dynamic lady, and I'm getting to know her very well. And when I pull her on, I'm going to tell you the title of today's show. And in fact, I'm going to get that going right now. So why don't we do that? Let's just get this show on the road. So today, we are going to be talking about gematria, which is the decoding reality and mass influence. And I'm going to let our guest talk about that, Sharon Kay, and our perceptions. Is it reality? Is it illusion? Like, what's going on here? So without further ado, Sharon, are you there?
I am.
Hello. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's quite an honor. I am so glad that Courtney Allen connected us because I feel like I knew you from another time because we didn't even talk and we're wearing the same colors. We slicked our hair back. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up.
And we both wear glasses.
That's
right. How's
Hopefully,
that, right?
When we get med beds, I won't need glasses someday.
Yes, seriously. We just give me that med bed. I needed it more than ever in the last 2 weeks. But yeah. So what I would like to do is to introduce, I want to ask you a couple of questions before we get into it.
Absolutely.
But I'm really excited because gematria is something that I'm passionate about. I wouldn't say I'll be able to articulate about it like you're going to for our audience, but I think that when you start explaining what it is, and for our audience, we're going to be going through a series of questions and interactions, so that I always like to treat a subject when I talk about it to our audience as though they've never heard of it before, and then get into things that maybe people who have would really appreciate too. So I like to start with the foundation, basics, and then, you know,
Wonderful.
get into it, you know, just because otherwise people are going, what are you talking about? I don't have no idea.
Thank you, because literally that's how the Holy Spirit works through me. They wanted me to break this down in simple terms because if you try to take it all in, it can be really confusing. So I like to keep it simple. So
I
thank
love
you.
that. Well, before we start, I want to share with our audience a little bit about who you are, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, girlfriend.
All right, here we go. So Sharon Kay, who you see sitting right there, is a successful creative inventor by trade, selling to big box stores around the world. Now, since retired for years, her true passion and focus has been philanthropy, helping the homeless as well as animal rescues. Over 5 years ago, Sharon completely awakened, like so many of us, right? She realized she was already decoding music, album titles, artwork on their covers, the message within songs, Hollywood movies, TV commercials, news, and much more. Believe it or not, it's all connected, just like we always hear about in entertainment stories. So created entertainment to connect the dots of this grand illusion we've been living in. It's one big, beautiful work of art, which is the perfect definition of the art of war. She learned that God, our creator, speaks to us in numbers, gematria, aka numerology. And we're going to get into that. She's had the pleasure to train alongside of people directly connected to General Flynn and Michael Protzman using Gematria, which for the record is exactly what our top ranking military uses to speak under the radar. Coding. Allow Sharon to expand your minds on the theory of this new spiritual modality so you can pay it forward. And that's what I love. One of the things I love about you, Sharon, is you love to share. She was told the world will need to learn in due time. If you're spiritual, run with it and share with your people. Absolutely. Yeah. So we will be putting all her contact details, where you can go see her on YouTube, on her show, Divine Numbers and Theories, and on Facebook as well. You can connect with her and on Telegram as well. So we'll be putting all of that in the post note shows when we upload to Rumble and various other places. So you will see her bio there and you'll be able to reach with you, Sharon, directly.
I love it. Yes. Right. I always get questions. So
yeah, no, this is fantastic. Okay, so let's get into it. For those of you joining today, this is my special guest, Sharon Kay, and we're going to be talking about Gematria, decoding reality and mass influence, our perceptions, or a scripted illusion. So let's start with my very basic first question is, what is Gematria?
Okay. Well, I'll break it down to simple terms. So Gematria is numerology.
Okay.
And so
let's say that again. Okay.
Yeah. So Gematria is numerology.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to cut this out.
Oh.
Okay.
Gematria is numerology. And as many people know in the spiritual community, everything is connected through numbers. So numbers break down to letters. Letters create sentences. For instance, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, Z equals 26. And what I found was I was already decoding before I learned Gematria. It's crazy how it all worked. And what I love is that I feel very, very honored. I was taught by the best of the best. Like I had mentioned, General Flynn, people connected to General Flynn, aka Michael Brian Protzman, quote unquote, -48, whom a lot of people will find out who he is in due time. But I was able to prove to a friend who was open to this, but didn't really understand it. And I've said this many times, but I always thank the older gentlemen and women when they wear their veteran hats and so forth. And I had a nice conversation. I had my friend Sandy alongside of me, and I thanked him for his service. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, is Gematria real?" And he took a step back and he's like, 100%. And what I found is that our military uses it to decode messages that are being put out in forms of entertainment, news titles, and so forth. It's no different than what you see the guy in all the movies. They're sitting there watching the boob tube all day, and they're like, hold on, I gotta listen to this. That's how Sharon's brain works. I do not like to sit there and watch the boob tube, but now that I've been decoding over the years, I'm like, this is just the most beautiful, godlike production. And when people learn, it's amazing.
So before we move on, I just want to clarify a few things for our audience. So you mentioned that there is a letter that is assigned to a number, right?
Correct.
So it's very specific. So no matter what you're decoding, that letter will convert to whatever that number is. And then you start sort of piecing it together.
Correct.
And right? Okay, great. So then is this something that comes from like biblical or pre-biblical times, or is this something that's a coded thing?
Okay. Yes, it is. It is. This is what I love to explain to people is there's a lot of famous quotes from President Trump where we go one, we go all, the ending won't be for everyone, and it's gonna be biblical. This is the missing link for people to go back and learn how to decode everything that was in front of our faces all along through numbers. Think of it like the Matrix. Mm-hmm. There are reasons why they created these movies and TV shows and so forth. It's just going to blow people's minds.
Okay. Yep. So Karen, I didn't mean to, but every time I have pause for a question, I really want the audience to understand what you're talking about, because I have questions too. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. So are you saying that this was from, this was pre-military, or was this always there and then the military decided to use it, or was it like, what was the
That's a good question. That's a good question. It's both. It's both. And the way I love to explain it, I mean, talk about mind-blowing, is that numerology was created before we even existed. Like when I explain this to people, they're like, oh, like I'm talking everything was scripted. Your street names, the same street in every city and town around the world. I mean, look at it as like God from above playing a game on a chessboard and placing everything strategically in certain towns, certain states, certain countries, and so forth. And evil does that as well. So it just blows my mind. And I think it's fascinating that when people learn how to use this, it's almost like your own personal tarot as well. So I encourage the spiritual community to learn it, because it really is that missing link. Sarah, when you think about how you have to explain this to your children and your family, it's one thing to be like, okay, let's listen to fake news and all that. But it's another thing to use it as a tool to actually enjoy the art of war. And then you can connect the dots and what they're saying behind the scenes. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And it's not as complicated as people think. So that's one thing I want to share with people.
So anybody could learn how to do this if they were committed to it?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I always encourage people, when I started learning, I'm going to be honest, I like to see, feel, sense things for myself. So I was a little skeptical, but as soon as I started using it, when you pop in things, whether it's through entertainment, you're trying to code something, or you hear something within and you pop it in, you type it out, it intuitively, it's just like a book or a movie. It literally, certain things gravitate towards you on every page of the results. I'd say people get about 3 to 8 of their own personal downloads per page, and the pages go up to like 100. So it's like creating a storyline. And the kicker for me was that when I started using it, you're also having a conversation with God, our creator. And that's what blew my mind, because I'm like, no one else knows this stuff about me. This is a little weird. Okay. And then it just kept happening and happening. And then I'm like, it's the real deal. It really is. And I think teenagers and children and everyone of all ages are going to love using this, because again, it's the missing link, and I can walk them through this process to get them out of the gates and really start dabbling with it so they can pay it forward. Absolutely.
So if somebody, okay, so I always like to play, I don't like to use this, but the devil's advocate in a sense, right? So somebody is not a religious, I don't think this is about being religious. I think this is about tapping into something that is beyond the walls of confinement. But if somebody, say, doesn't really believe in God, right? Would they understand any of this? Or is that somebody, is that a person that just wouldn't resonate with this? Or do you think that they could look at it almost like a puzzle?
Oh, it's definitely a puzzle.
Right.
And
so they could still benefit.
Each and every one of us, as we've been taught throughout history, we all bring something to the table. And this is a form of allowing people to put their 2 cents in and to teach others in their specialty area. But when you talk about people that are not believers in God, totally understand. I went through a period in my life where I was in high school, and I remember sitting in Catholic church going, we're all going to hell. Everyone here is a bunch of hypocrites. They say you can't be on birth control and, abortions and love affairs or whatever. I'm like, half of us, we're all going to hell. And I felt that same exact way. It just did not resonate with me anymore. Corporate church, as I like to say it. And I don't like to be, I'm not being disrespectful. I hope people understand it. It's just my own personal view after I've gone down the rabbit hole. But they were not answering my questions within it. I believe that corporate church is the history and that we can learn from it, but it's up to us for the future. And so when it comes to people that aren't a believer in God, totally understand. I say, utilize it as a tool instead of using it to piece your own personal life together and your own personal secrets and what you've been through and so forth. Use it as a tool and go back and decode. And if they want to keep it separate, they can keep it separate. But at the end of the day, it's the real deal. And what I love most about this, Sarah, is I've already heard from the Holy Spirit in my guides that this is the tool to make people a believer in our creator, whatever God looks like to you. Frequency, you know what I mean?
Nature. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I love that. I love that. And so for our audience, we will be getting more into sort of how to use Gematria, and then Sharon is going to explain that, so that to give us examples and stuff, and also to go into different areas, right, of whether it's entertainment news, so that she can show you examples of exactly how it's used, so it doesn't just remain some like beautiful word, by the way. And so maybe let's get into some of that, unless you wanted to finish. So before we do that, I think what would be really interesting to know is, who is using this other than the individual user? So you mentioned the military, right? Obviously these are the good, well, the white hats and the black hats are using it, probably, because it's probably available
more the white hats. One thing that how I like to explain things is, when I had awakened over 5 years ago, my personal story, Sarah. You listened to my interview I had forwarded to you that I kind of keep on the down low for now. But what I learned, there was a famous saying that President Trump would always say. He's like, signs and symbolism will be their greatest downfall. And so I started going down the rabbit hole, learning signs and symbolism. So I moved from New Hampshire, the live free or die state of New Hampshire. Just saying, there's a key to that.
Sure.
And I moved to Utah. And when I moved to Utah, it's Mormon country out here. And just for the record, up front, I mean, no disrespect to the members whatsoever. I firmly believe that many of them are God-loving people. And, but what I quickly learned is when I moved out here, everyone was like, oh, you can't wear that. You can't say that. I'm like, where's the mummy juice? We were able to buy wine at the grocery store. And I'm not a gambler, but like, you know, I'd like to buy a scratch ticket here and there. We could buy it all at the grocery store. I'm like, I got a problem with this. Not everyone here is Mormon. And why are they taking over the whole state when there are other people? It's not always about them. You know, it's like we're an all-inclusive, everyone is a being and a creation of God, not just the Mormons. And but what I learned is I also have access to all the original mining maps here in Utah that are not a lot of people know anything about them. They are under lock and key. Matter of fact, I wear this beautiful cross and diamond pendant. Francis Coulier is the one that drew them all by hand. And when I think about a woman how long ago doing this in a man's world, I'm like,
amazing.
Glenn, his family, I'm like, I wish I met her. And it's not a coincidence that she lived on 911 Military Way out here. Just saying.
Wow.
And so for instance, I had learned that evil, like the Illuminati, they have their secret handshakes and signs and symbolism and so forth. However, God speaks to us in numbers. And I feel like that is his weapon. His weapon that people, when they learn to use it properly, it will start coming to them intuitively. And that's what it's all about. Because one thing I cannot stand, Sarah, don't even get me going, is I learned about the Christ DNA. The Christ DNA is called the laminin protein, and it is scientifically proven. So why don't they teach this in school? That's your intuitive side to you. That's where you have the thoughts in your head and so forth. And that's kind of where I started going down the rabbit hole, because we all talk in our head. We all dream, but they don't teach this in school. You know what I mean? So yes, it is a tool for God's warriors. And I think it just, every time I think about this area, it just blows my mind. And I'm so grateful that I'm awakened, that I can read through it. And that we're all going to be okay.
So what made you, okay, so when you were waking up, what made you go from just waking up and maybe being connected spiritually, obviously, believing in God, but what made you go to Gematria? What was the jump there? You know, like, how did you find out about them? What is it?
Divine timing. Divine timing.
So it found you, or you found it, or
it was a mess. It was a combination of both. I had a gentleman, his name is Andy. He was the person that awakened me when I lived in New Hampshire not to take that.
The jibby jab.
The jibby jibby jibba. And he sent me a lot of those doctor videos that were being taken down throughout the country. And that's what really started the awakening process for me. I was also going through menopause, which I was just, I'm not going to lie, I was suicidal. I'm like, if this is living, this is bullshit. And all they want to do is put some synthetic shit in my body all the time. Like, why aren't they giving me answers? What can I do? And what I found was my doctor kept saying, and now that I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're saying it for everything. I said, what is going on? Does this have to do with anything of my surgery? And so, oh, there seems to be no evidence. There seems to be no evidence. Doesn't that sound familiar? But he's the one that had awakened me, and he sent me a few channels to start looking at, and -48 was one of them. and wait till people find out who he really is. I was skeptical at first as well, but it all aligns 100% with Gematria. So I feel very, very blessed and grateful. And it was divine timing.
Divine timing in that.
Yep. Because I just remember sitting going, you know, if everyone has to work 2 jobs to just make ends meet and barely have time for their family, it's not the people. There's something wrong with the system. So that's when I really started asking those questions within and so forth. You know, I think like everyone, we're all doing it in a different, unique way.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of want to go back to the Christ DNA thing, because I think that's going to pique people's interest and go, what did you just say? Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about that or not? It's completely up to you.
What part?
The Christ DNA, when you talked about that. I was like, I can't not mention that now you've said
it. It's people can find out more information on that. So it's called the laminin protein. And I already mentioned it is scientifically proven. And before I get going on this, I just want you to recognize all the hand gestures and everything that we do. We're all a psychological warfare game from learning from our entertainment. We learned how to say our sayings and so forth. So I like to show people how we're all copying monkey see, monkey do. But the laminin protein is scientifically proven. And what's beautiful about it is when they zoom in on it, on the gene, it is highlighted as a holy cross within your body. It's your DNA. It's in your DNA. I mean,
so we all have it.
Fascinating. Yeah. Unless you're like an ecto or something.
Yeah, or a reptilian or something. That's probably why they're trying to destroy it with the jibby jab, right?
Bingo. So what I had learned is, for me personally, I'm just going to take off these glasses because the reflection is driving bonkers. But that's what this whole war is over. What I've learned, it's not so much. I mean, obviously, it's control and so forth, but it starts with your Christ DNA. And I remember when I was back in New Hampshire, when I was slowly awakening, and I have the video on my camera. I was taking video footage of this, and I'll try to speak in code just in case. I don't think that they're really shadow banning anymore because President Trump said no more. Everyone
except
can use
on
their freedom of
Facebook.
speech.
Ugh.
Right.
And Instagram.
Ugh. We're so connected. We were just in stereo. I love it.
I mean, Rumble won't be an issue, but I don't know if YouTube might be an issue for you. I don't know, but so I just you say whatever you want. I don't care.
I love it. I love it. So what I have learned is that, and I was even questioning it before, because you know all these commercials where they're just trying to glorify like finding out your family history and this and that. It's no different than the snake oil synthetic shit they want you to put in their body.
Right.
They literally disguising it because it was an easy way to find who were the true descendants of the Christ DNA, which we are all Christ within, what I have found, because we all have the laminin protein. But as many of your audience knows, that the Rh negative is the Christ bloodline. So what better way than to track people down the way they used to and shoot you and burn witches at the stake and people that were intuitive and all that, have them come to you and be like, let's like figure out who you were connected to and if you were connected to anyone, you know. So I got to give evil credit. I mean, that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, they're good at what they do. They're
disguising the snake oils.
Right. And just to add to what you're saying too, and for the audience to understand this, if there's a video that you can find where, to add to exactly what Sharon's saying, because it might seem a bit far out, right, to some people maybe who come across this, but there's a video of Bill Gates giving a CIA lecture.
That's what I was talking about. I have that on phone.
Right?
On my phone, I recorded. I'm like, I can't.
Oh, crazy. And he's basically instructing on how they wanted to delete the the God gene in the human body, right? Is that the one you're
Bingo!
talking about?
Yes, I was just about to link to that. That was my video I recorded back in New Hampshire, and I posted it, and they kept taking it down. And it was the one where someone was filming it, and he was in a military, so CIA, military, all them.
Military. Yeah, exactly.
He was up speaking, and literally, he's like, "We got to find a way to get rid of the creatives. The creatives are people such as you and I and your audience that are connected and realize that there's something more." And that's what they were going after, all on record. So it's time where I encourage people to be open to being open, because if they're not, they're going to be stuck.
Left behind too.
That's the box they want to keep you in.
Yeah.
But
100%.
yes, so
Isn't
they
that
want to
crazy?
destroy that. Yes. Thank you for linking that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, before I forget, for your audience, and maybe if you could take a note and put this down, General Flynn and a few others had compiled a very, very good documentary, which of course you will not find on a lot of the mainstream, but it's called The Jesus Strand 1 and 2. And it speaks of the Christ DNA and who was the Christ. So whether your audience wants to believe it or not, I think they'll find it fascinating that it runs through certain lineage, like Abraham Lincoln, the Kennedys, and so forth. So it's kind of like that missing link where why would President Trump want to bring up releasing the JFK files? It's all connected. If people keep their minds open, there's no other way to explain it. And it's connected to the Christ DNA.
That's crazy. That is wild.
But and beautiful at the same time.
It is.
I'm like,
it's so wild how we've been just lied to about so many different things. And then, for those who are out there who might not be Christian this is so beyond just a title, because I know some people are triggered by, the what I call like the corporate religion kind of a things. But it's just like, whether you call it Christ consciousness, I know for some people Jesus Christ, I get what that means to them, and that's great. That's great for them, fine. But there's so many other people who exist too who have very similar experiences, so I'm not going to not include them as well.
Absolutely.
Right? I think it's just too, and look, every religion has their shit with them, okay?
And girlfriend, if I put one really quick thing, the one thing that I love about Gematria, and I'm glad you brought this up, it's for all religions and faith.
I love that.
For all religions and faith. So it's
all
not
codes.
Yes.
Right?
So it's kind of cool. So everyone's included in it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the point, why also so many people have woken up around the world, and why we are going through this transformation and this new birthing, so to speak, is because we are connected, by regardless of how we look, what color we are, what gender we are, we're connected as humans. And when I mean gender, you know what I mean. I'm like talking not the craziness out there. Although I do agree, I will absolutely say life is complicated. And yes, are there anomalies in life, and are there things that happen? Absolutely. But we're not talking about the insanity of the activists that you're seeing on television. We're talking about all humans that are experiencing things, right? And so it is and I studied comparative religions, being from a household of many different faiths. And when you look at the through lines, they're pretty much all the same.
Right. And isn't it interesting that they all prophesied through parables? And that's another thing that I love, is whatever religion someone is comparing to, or the scriptures, that's a perfect place to put Gematria codes, because it literally boom, boom, boom. And it aligns everything. And you're like, cut it out. It's been in our faces all along, and we didn't know, because like you mentioned, the labels, the religion. Why the hell do they keep putting in the black? And I don't mean any disrespect, but I feel like people, I can say this openly with your audience and they feel the same, is we're done with your labels of the Black Lives Month and this month it's this and that. That is how you continue to keep everyone divided.
100%.
This is where we all come together realizing, holy shit, this is what it's all about.
100%. And also too, we got to question it all. I'm not, personally, I don't feel that, you know, every institution, every corporation has to be examined. You know,
absolutely,
right? You end up believing whatever you believe, and it's very personal. But every religion,
it's scary.
Every religion
really
has to be, because you know what? You have good, bad, and ugly in everything. And one of the things, I actually shared this with a friend not too long ago, and then we're going to get it. I promise you, audience, we're going to get into examples of how to use Gematria. But I think it's important that this comes up because every spiritual belief system, religious belief system has crossovers. Absolutely. And I said this to a friend not so long ago. They asked me a question about who do you think is the least judgmental of the religions, blah, 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 blah. And one of the things I shared with them is, in all my sitting down with some really great minds from many different religions who are very articulate, can really expound on thought, philosophy, faith in a beautiful way. And then and some of the followers of who I've been touched by throughout my life, there's one thing, and not the ones who are a little bit more have wisdom and a lot of depth of thought to what they're doing, the ones who are just basically born into it, so that's what they do, or that's what they were told, so that's what they do. Right, like all thing, right? The one through line in every religion, a person who comes from different religions, that one thing that you'll find repeated all the time is theirs is the best.
I love that you say that, because that's what we're taught. That's what,
right?
That's what it's like out here in Mormon country. And I don't mean this towards disrespectful towards the members, because I personally feel that I've already decoded what's going to happen here in Utah to a degree. And a lot of people are not paying attention.
They're not.
They've already been the court system for a reason. I've been seeing people step down in the news titles. I'm like, oh, that's a good code. Like, people can find me on TikTok. Of course, it got taken down. I wasn't even up for a couple months, and I had over a million views, and they took it away.
Oh, wow. They took it away?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they wouldn't do that now, but then, right?
Yeah. Well, I do have an alternative one, but and I don't want to go off too much on the religion, but so I'm not going to bring that up, but the Ogden IRS out here, not even a couple months ago, less than 2 months ago, had severe fire damage. There, like a whole building had burnt, and I have it. It's my channel is called Sharon the Red Baron, and of course it's like the one that has the most views on it. But it's like, ooh, it could have sensitive content on it, whatever. And it states right there. And not only that, I just decoded in the local news. Was it yesterday or the day before? Time is speeding up so quickly. But it said that the Ogden IRS building is one of 400 something buildings throughout the country that may go up for sale. Yes. And it's the second largest IRS building, from what I'm told, in the country. And that area, I remember driving through that area when I first came out to Utah. That's my spidey senses. And I'm sure a lot of your audience, and you as well, Sarah, like, when you go to an area and you're just like, ew, it just feels
icky. Yeah.
Like, it may look beautiful, but it just has no life force energy. Right?
Yeah.
There's a devil's way out there and all that. Oh, that's a whole nother show. I've got some connections out here.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I totally agree with you that you know, especially the Mormons. I mean, I've interviewed people. They can look up my YouTube channel because I wanted to learn why so many people were leaving. And it's a fact. There's a lot of sexual ritual abuse going on out here. And some of them have become very good friends of mine. And I feel bad for these people. I mean, literally, central casting, which is a code word for President Trump and his people. Where am I going with this? They're already putting for decades how all the rumors of priests and so forth are sexually abusing. But why is it that they put this one piece of garbage up on a pedestal when there's tons of people,
right?
And then people don't ask it anymore? It's because these people were brought into a religion. I mean, it's just like my parents. That could have been me. That could have been you, where they're just like, you know, their grandparents and they pass it down to them. And this is just the way it is. But what I have found is their religion is probably one of the most corrupt, because when they tell you not to drink, smoke, or do anything to your face, and the bishop's wives are walking in with these big blown up lips and these big boobs out of, and no one calls them out on it. No. That same rule applies. The rules apply to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
No one will even stand up to them because they don't think they're going to get into the pearly gates. And my point is when people, I get very passionate about this, because when I've heard stories of some of the people I interviewed, I'm like, I can't believe this. They literally go to their family and their friends like this really happened. And that takes a lot of courage, first off, right?
Yeah,
that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And their families diss them. Like their friends and family, I'd say about half of the people, they're taught to turn their back on those people because whatever bullshit like excuse, I'm like, you ain't getting into the pearly gates. You're not getting into the pearly gates, because they all are putting themselves above another human being. I'm like, that does not work. I don't know who told you that, but
yeah, again, it's the compliancy and the, you know, stay in the line or else punishment. And that's why, quite honestly, I do have a little bit of issue with even a lot of religions, but Christianity, some sects of Christianity, where they make God so, he sounds cabal to me, like the way, you know, they're God fearing, and I understand.
Yes,
I can never. It's God loving. For me, it's God loving, not God fearing. Look, a lot of my friends say God fearing. I don't ascribe to that.
Me neither.
If that floats their boat, fine. Doesn't float mine at all. That just seems like you're not doing something out of duty. You're doing it out of fear. Not, you know, you're not doing it because you want to willfully do it. It's a control system, and I'm not down. I'm personally not down for that.
I love that about you.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, one of our famous taglines in Gematria is the church is going to die and faith is going to fly. And I feel it. I see it.
I like that.
Yes.
Right. You should make a t-shirt. I'll wear it.
We'll both make some t-shirts.
We'll both wear it on future shows together. I love that. Oh my God.
Twinsies.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Instead of the red shirts, we'll have those t-shirts.
Hair back, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't plan that audience either. We literally showed up on camera and I'm like, wait a minute. Are y'all feeling the synchronicities now, people? You seeing the numbers and all that? Like, finally, seriously. They scripted this in all of our entertainment too. Think about that.
That's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure the audience is like, okay, ladies, get the hell on with it. So what? I am so curious about this because as somebody who came from the entertainment industry, I'm really more knowing about disclosure, looking back on all the stuff, but this is slightly in alignment, but different, right? So let's start. What area do you want to start with? Maybe entertainment might be a good place to start, because I think that's what most people will align with. They've all seen a movie. They've all watched, listened to music or whatever. So I'm going to let you roll with it. I think what would be helpful, but you find, you know, what makes sense. How I would like to know, for me, as somebody, say, who'd never heard of it before, when I'm watching entertainment, like, what's the goal? What is it supposed to do to me? Like, what is the goal with what they're doing, and then how we decode it? how do we decode it? And like, I don't even know, what am I looking at? Like I'm going to let you roll with it.
Okay. So thank you so much. So I'm going to try to explain this in simple terms. And then I need you to reel me back in when I get towards the end to start the decoding process. Does that work for you? Because I could just I get so excited because it just blows my mind. Okay. So the best way that I can explain it is personally, I believe Jesus made a deal with the devil to create entertainment. I believe it's like the game of chess, and I believe that Satan, the devil, whomever, whatever floats people's boat, whatever term.
Wait, I stop you there. Why would Jesus make a deal with the devil? Like, I know people are going to stop me at that.
Oh, no. I totally get it. But you have to, I want to expand people's minds. First off, the Rothschilds and so forth own a lot of the entertainment companies. However, there are some run by the good guys. We like to call them the white hats. But at the end of the day, I think everyone can understand that, and this is why they say it so much in the movies, whoever wins it all. Wins the gold, wins everything. And so I personally believe that Jesus had to make a compromise with evil, because if evil was in charge of the movies and entertainment, we'd all be gone by now. So that's step number one. This is why it's so genius. So Satan's like, well, you're going to have to, if you don't want us to wipe out people the way we used to do it, you're going to have to make a compromise with us. So they came up with a program to slowly normalize people's behaviors, create trends, create clothing trends, hair trends, makeup trends, whatever you want, so that is an opportunity for the general public to buy into their snake oils, to make them feel like they're not good enough. And when you think of TV commercials, first off, they're all paid actors, and they're normalizing a horrific disease by distracting the audience of doing fun things and so forth. Have you noticed that, Sarah? They're like,
oh yeah.
If you have we've got the pill for you for your severe headache. It may cause a heart attack. You may get embolism or blood clot.
Or die.
Or die, but it's going to cure your headache. This is the art of war. They are literally normalizing behaviors. So when you think of it like that, everyone's a paid actor. Well, you got to come up with those Ponzi schemes to keep the money going. You know what I'm saying? And to program people's minds, to make them think that they can think for themselves. But a lot of them really don't. Does that make sense? So they're kind of, it's no different than, I mean, I walk around and I look at all these teenagers and they all act the same, like anywhere from like that 10 to 13. They're like, yeah, there's my mom. I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is.
Oh, no.
It's a program.
And so, would you say, I'm so sorry to pause, but I think it's important. Would you say that also the Rothschilds and whoever else were like them too, who owned all the media and the news outlets, this, that, and the other, they're also, you've got CIA in there and people who are used to doing the brainwashing. I'm sure KGB at the time, these are psychological manipulations like MK Ultra, right? And then
we are in it through our entertainment, our
Operation
Mockingbird, all of our programs.
Right.
Yes, that's why they call them programs. I've had some people that are like, I can think for myself. I'm like, I'm like, okay. So literally everything is a program. And they laughed at me. And I'm like, well, then why do they call it a TV commercial program? Why do they call it software program? Because they're freaking programming your mind without you even knowing. I'm like, this isn't rocket science. It's so simple. It's genius on both sides. So I firmly believe that so that they wouldn't take people out the old school way, like ransacking villages and, raping the women
Raping
and
and
children.
pillaging. Yeah.
Exactly. They're like, we'll do it this way, because it was along their line where they could increase their quote unquote technologies and inventions, even though we already know. But it was a slow process to slowly brainwash the generations. So it started with our grandparents, work really, really hard and, get a good job and insurance and all that, all the same shit that goes into their Ponzi schemes. But just like the Mormon church and everyone else, this is bred into you from your family lineage. So it's kind of like, this is just the way things are. So at the end of the day, whoever wins this spiritual war, which we already know, God already won, it goes back to the people,
right?
Not the evil. And when you think of it from a standpoint like that, and so the other thing is that what I find genius about this, and I know there's going to be people in your audience, like the teenagers and the people that are into Comic-Con and all of that. Our top ranking military is saying every single TV show, every single movie, every single song was launched at a specific time where they were literally, and not only that, it was the art of war, that there's duality. People can hear what they want through the duality. You can look at it from Team Jesus, because I'm all about Team Jesus, or you can look at it through the angle of how they were going to wipe us out. You just take your pick. And when you can learn to read through them and listening between the lines, it all makes sense. So think about it, Sarah. If Satan's evil pieces of garbage ended up winning, they could have flipped the script to use entertainment for their benefit. And I like to use this as an example to start people in this process is, and I'm going to use this as an example, I always do, is think of those pre-recorded laughing in the background, the live audience in the background.
Canned laughter.
Correct. But I want to encourage your audience from this point on, when you hear that, rewind it again and listen to what they're saying, because the evil ones, they like to jack off laughing at, and I'm sorry if I say that word, but
oh no, please.
They're really creepy. And like, they were like, okay, you need to entertain us, Godlike Productions, because this is, you get what I'm saying? So they like to get their little words in there without the common people noticing. And what I mean by that is homonyms. Homonyms were created, and I hear this through the Holy Spirit. Homonyms were created to distract people. And here's what I mean. Think of how you can view it from either side that I just mentioned, Team Jesus or Team Satan, whatever you want. You've got the sun in the sky, and then you have a sun. You've got a shot, and you've got a shot. This is how they can disguise how they're really talking between the lines. And when people expand their minds, they're going to be like, holy shit, this was in front of me this whole time.
So they infuse it into the scripts is what you're saying.
Exactly. But the thing that I find interesting is that prompted pre-recorded laugh. Here's a couple examples. I used to love watching, prior to me awakening and decoding on my own and then learning Gematria and numerology, aka numerology, is that there was an episode where Charlie Sheen in 2.5 Men, he's like, yeah, I got her drunk. I popped her a couple pills. We went to Vegas. I took her in the alley, beat her up a few times. And like, I don't know, something like that. And what do you hear? Ha, 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 ha. Is that funny? No, that's the program to screw with your mind. But also, flip side, Team Jesus, I can read right through the script to a degree, like commercials and everything. Commercials were created to make us look dumb. That's why Team Satan is like, these people don't even know. Like, we're making them look like the biggest dummies. Like, there's one commercial, Sarah, that drives me crazy. And this is what I mean by normalizing. I think it has to do with banking or something. And you always notice it's fear factor commercials. It's like, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you need this. Oh, you're in debt, you need this app. Oh, like the Chime app, you're not getting paid and you're working your butt off, but you can get a couple $100s in advance. It's not the people, it's the system. But there's this commercial where this girl, the parents are talking, they're in their backyard, and their backyard is literally probably this big. And the girl's on a swing hitting.
Oh, I've seen that.
And I'm like, they're throwing it in your face that they're laughing at you, that literally your child has no place to swing. And you think that is, do you get what I'm saying? They're really sick in the head.
Yeah. But it's the limitation. They're just basically sucking the life out of you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so when you think about it, there's many moving parts to it. And, but what I find the most fascinating with Team Jesus is that these producers' brains are just off the chart brilliant. And what I mean by that is I can see through what they're doing is they're connecting a show and a movie and names and so forth to connect to another movie and so forth to tell a story, so that's why people can go back to their entertainment and they can start connecting the dots. It's brilliant. But what I think is even more brilliant is that they already had to come up with certain shows and concepts to connect to another show or a storyline to be told to the common people when the truth is told. And for me, I'm just like, that's some brilliant writing.
Yeah. Well, then you have the spin-off shows, right? And then you have the prequels, and then you have the sequels, and then you have series, so they could keep on going the message that they want to get. And it sounds like it's all about disguising the message too sometimes, and sometimes it's overt, but you just don't see it unless you know what to see.
Exactly. So when people are awakened and open to really taking this in, they're going to view their whole world and their whole life a totally different way. But there was one other thing I wanted to state on that. Where was I going with them connecting? For instance, one of my good friends back east, we did a local TV show in town, and her brother wrote for Johnny Carson for 20 plus years. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know at the time, but I'm like, shit. I'm like, he's got to be a brilliant genius because he's working for Team Jesus, because that's a white hat operation. I've already read through that one. And gosh, there was something I wanted to say that you would mention. I'm like, oh, that's a really good point on something.
Was it the spin-off?
Cartoons. So your audience that is listening to this in the future, think about this, Sarah, and I know you'll get it because you're from Hollywood. When they created cartoons to de-escalate a story they're trying to tell you. And what I mean is, we're all familiar with The Simpsons and how they've predicted things, and that Rick and Morty show and all these cartoons. And if you look at your children's TV shows now, guys, I really want to encourage you when it comes to like the superhero ones, and look at the title. What I've learned is that they do not waste airspace. There's a story, they're connecting a story so that it can be used for the great disclosure. Because as we are nearing this great disclosure, whichever side you're on, I mean, I know I'm on the positive timeline. I know that you're on the positive timeline, and we can see through it. But there's a lot of people going, I hate that orange man and blah, blah, blah. Like they're so focused on it. They can't get past the information you're trying to share with them. And you're like,
they're in the mind virus. And if they took the jab, then they're screwed.
Yeah.
Because it's eating their brain pretty much.
That's why we have so many zombie apocalypse movies. Think about that. They're literally showing people that they're
the normalization. Right.
Exactly.
The normalization of it.
But yes, the cartoons, though, that was genius, because you need to explain this to the children as well. You can't explain something so scary and evil and what their plan was. That's why they created cartoons for children. So that, and superhero movies and so forth, that's going to be their niche. That's going to be where the parents go back. And I've already been told by the Holy Spirit, once children's and teens and Comic-Con people catch on to this, they're literally going to be decoding, just like they decode in movies. Like a lot of those movies, you know, they're like, oh, we got to go to this street and they're doing over there. And everything is scripted. It's just genius. Like the background, there's a name and there's a picture in the background. That's how I pay attention. And a lot of other coders is we pay attention to those tiny details that everyone else is overlooking.
So you're talking about details that are in the movie, right? Or
yes,
or in the animation, and those.
Correct.
And so are they all necessarily bad?
Oh no, like I can actually read through good and bad scripts.
Because they have to have some good in there, right? They have to have, yeah.
And also there's another tool when I decode and other friends of mine, we decode, is sometimes you just have to close your eyes and listen between the lines. It's sometimes that easy because they're trying to also distract you with things happening in the background and so forth, where that's why they always say that in the movies. Just close your eyes and listen between the lines. You know, all of our sayings that we've grown up with are going to come back and they're going to make a lot more sense. Like everything happens under your feet, tunnels, human trafficking. You know what I mean? Like it's genius.
You know, it is genius because we've actually been watching some older films of when we were growing up and I was like, that was there then? Yeah.
Yes!
Was it right? I'm like, what? So how would you use like the code to look at a movie? Like how does that, I know there's the intuitive part, but how does that work?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So one thing, you want to have your clicker nearby so you can pause things when you hear things and you can rewind it and so forth. But literally it's the sayings that they're saying. Maybe the title of the movie, the year it was launched. Personally, I feel that people are going to know once they start testing it on themselves. This is how I encourage people to start with Gematria, and we can get into how to actually use it, is start decoding on yourself. Like your name, when you were born, where you were born, a song that meant a lot to you. Think of it as a software program because that's what it is. Like when I'm trying to connect dots and if I feel like the universe is trying to be like, Sharon, we're trying to tell you something and we need you to, like, sometimes I'll even like put what I feel intuitively. I'll type it in and then I put my name Sharon at the end and I'll put Utah. Like, what am I supposed to be decoding that only I would be able to connect to? Does that make sense? Or the person behind in your audience, like this is how it works. And then, like I said, you're going to start reading it like a script. And when you get the results per page, as I mentioned before, you're going to get anywhere between 3 to even up to 10 messages that are for you, because this is a program. And the best way I can explain it is that they already started to divide our children in schools into groups, right? Think of it that way. A control group, the clique, like these are the dumb kids. These are the smart kids. Like they were already doing it, but that is part of a program. So just keep that in mind for your audience, that every single message on that page is not going to be for that person. There are going to be other people because we all have to bring the puzzle piece together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I remember when we had the movie Grease, right? That was the John Travolta one. They had all the, even though it's a great fun movie, they had the cliques in there, right? They had
that's a program.
All the different groups, and to be bad was to be in the cool group kind of a thing, right? And then I mean, it's always kind of been there in a lot of different. It just got progressively more apparent, and then you had oh God, West Side Story, right? That was really about separating those groups out and stuff like that. So do you want to talk about, so I know you mentioned it was a letter equates with a number.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, maybe give us a few examples of how you would start using that? Is it a group? Is it words that equate to a number two? Or is it just letters?
Yeah. Great question. Okay. So for your audience, I would recommend you grab a pen and take a few notes just so you can have this written down so you can get right out of the gates. So it's called Gematria, aka numerology, and you spell it Gematria. Okay. And then the website that you want to use is gematrix.org, which is GE and the word matrix. .org. You see, they're already put in front of you. The matrix is all about numbers, and
I'm going to put that there. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So
Gematrix.org.
yeah. And so the best way I can explain it is, letters and numbers break down into a message. So A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so forth. Z equals 26. So how to properly use it, there's a few rules. So I want to encourage you to write this down so you know how to code properly. Because I remember in the beginning, I was not coding properly. I'm like, wait a minute. So we do not put a numerical value. It's like a search engine. So when you get to the site, you'll see you can type in something. You do not want to put numerical values like the number 1 or the number 2. You can spell it out though. Or you could also, I encourage people, if they want to have like a little cheat sheet, to write down the alphabet and then just go through number 1 to Z, like I just mentioned. Just kind of do it that way.
They have it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just have like a little notebook or
like
something.
a timetables little cheat sheet kind of thing.
Yes. But here's a perfect example. So instead of putting the number 1 and 2 in, I would put the letters A and B in. So they just have kind of an idea. But if you want to stick with something simple, just always spell everything out and you should be good. So that's the rule of thumb. And like I said, I would definitely start with things about yourself. That is the aha moment that all of us have found, like, no one knows that about me. Oh my gosh, this reminds me of the time I was here. And this is how it works. It's just such an intuitive, brilliant program. And
so two questions come up for me there.
Yeah.
So I like the one of starting with ourselves first, because I think that gives us we're directly involved in it, and we're gonna know for ourselves if it's resonating, right? So if I'm putting stuff in about myself, say I put my name in and maybe my age or where I was born, say for example, then what is that output going to tell me or show me?
Good question. Okay. So as I mentioned, there's going to be like a title search bar, right? What they want to do is, when they put that in, it calculates everything. And so it brings up sentences and so forth. So you've got one column that's right underneath the number. You'll see it's bolded. It says Jewish. And then there's another one that says simple. People want to, please write this down. You want to go with the simple gematria results. And the reason for that is, as we mentioned earlier, Sarah, where this is for all religions and faiths. It's not just about one or the other. But what I've also found is sometimes you will see codes for you in the Jewish. But stick with the simple. And as you read through the lines, certain things are going to resonate. So
what does it mean, the Jewish? What, like Hebrew Jewish? Like
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Not the Khazarian Jewish. Not the fake Jews. The Hebrew.
Sorry, people, we're not trying to offend anyone, but and there's a couple people that there's one guy out there, my buddy Tom Numbers. He's like the white hat Gematria king over there. He's in Central Casting. Just quote me on that. He interviews a lot of the cast and so forth on Harry Potter, and he's very connected, and he's connected for a reason. He's playing an everyday guy. And Tom, I'm just going to tell you, I know there's something bigger to this. He was supposed to come visit. He did visit out in Utah, not last summer, but the summer before. We were going to connect, and I was going to show him the mining maps, but he was just so busy. But he's a good one to follow. But yes, you want to go with the simple gematria. And then you're just going to start seeing patterns, that certain things that inside of you, when you type in things about your history, like maybe you'll put in your parents' name, maybe you'll put in the street name you grew up with and so forth. Like mine are off the charts crazy. I can't even tell you.
Really?
Like sometimes I'm just like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Like, it sounds really, really amazing, but like, show me. But so it kind of works like that. And then once you're starting to feel it, that's when I encourage people to start dabbling in decoding your entertainment music, because they're trying to tell you a storyline. And like I said, it comes intuitively.
So it's phrases. So certain phrases, maybe they keep saying over again. Maybe they're showing you things on a sign or something, right? So then you would take that word and you would input it.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that. That's another beautiful thing. Some of my friends that are learning gematria now, and I think a lot of your audience, like we were talking about earlier, the synchronicities are off the charts now. It's like you're starting to see 111, 222. Like you're like, oh my gosh, I looked down and like now it's 444 and 555.
Yeah, my friend is like that. It happens every time we're out. She'll say it like 10, 15 times. There's my number. Oh my God, there's that one.
My number's 420, but it has nothing to do with pot. I think I told you that. But my point is I really want to expand people's minds, because we've been so trapped in this box that it's hard for people to think outside that box. But once they realize that gematria and numerology is real, that our military uses it, that God is speaking, whatever God looks like to you, it's really happening. When you're driving down the road now, especially now, there are no coincidences. Like I am really, the last year I have recognized that, and I'm like, I can't make this. I just make this stuff up. And sometimes I'll even, like, if I'm on the road, I have a little folder. This is another thing I'd love to encourage people to write down, is start writing down things that pop in your head randomly, and start a list so that you can start decoding them when you're present instead of at work and so forth. Because that's where I find that I personally get some of my best codes that are related to my own personal story, and they'll receive that as well, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to just give some little tips and tricks and so forth.
Could you give us a simple example of that? Or just something that you could share. Okay. Or maybe make one up that is not necessarily you, but maybe.
Okay, here's a great one. Here's a great one. So real quick, I had mentioned to you before, Sarah, on our interview, when I interviewed you, and I think we discussed this, or maybe after. My magic number is 420. Has nothing to do with pot. I was divorced on 420. I sold my Jeep on 420. I decode out here in the Park City area. Comes to 420, 420. I see it everywhere, even back east when I would look up at the clock all the time. It was kind of a joke in my family. I'm like, oh, it's 420 again. And that's when I found out the girls were like, you looked at me something. So anyhow, part of my awakening process was when I was going through the change, stripped me of all of my senses, my physical, mental, spiritual. Other women out there, I'm finding them, they are realizing that surgery. I know I may offend a lot of people. Please keep an open mind. They don't perform mastectomies in other countries. It's because they know you're going to go crazy. And then they make you feel like you're going crazy, and they want to pump you with more synthetic shit. And that's a whole nother story. But I start in, my mom had passed in 2008. Fast forward, my dad passed in 2019. And I started, I was an orphan. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just so sad. And I had great parents. So I started revisiting John Denver's music. And that was when I started realizing I was already decoding. He has a song called Rhymes and Reasons. And when you listen between the lines, he's talking about the towers falling down and saving the children. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, he died in 1997, but this sounds like it's going towards 9/11. I'm like, you can't make that up. So that's how my brain started working.
Do you think that's why they got rid of him? I don't know.
Oh, we're gonna find out. There's a lot of rumors. How do you turn a devastation into something fun for everyone? I know your audience is gonna think this is crazy, but during the Trump rallies, there are masked people. Like, go look up who people know who Bob Joyce is and all that. It's gonna blow people's minds.
Oh, yeah.
But I digress, as you know. But so one night I heard intuitively. Now, when you put something in and you type something in, I want people's brains to think of software, just like they use like computer programmers and so forth. Think numbers. There's literally millions and millions and millions of algorithms. I like to compare algorithms to your thoughts. Your thoughts are algorithms. So anyhow, out of the blue one night, I'm like, oh, I should put that in because I just heard it. And then I typed out Sharon Kay, Take Me Home, Country Roads. It pops up to 420. I'm like, that's crazy. So do you know what I mean? Like, you start to hear things. And then when I started reading through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what the universe has been trying to tell me. But I'm like, I can't, like, that's how it works. So it really, some of my friends that have been using it lately, they're like, Sharon, I can't believe this is all real. There's no way, like, because and I'm like, just take screenshots and connect it to the cloud because you're literally documenting your life. So Space Force loves me and all the rest of us. I'm like, screenshot. Because
that's crazy.
Even though you might not understand a message at that present time, you heard it. So take a screenshot, because what I found, it's just like your algorithms in YouTube. That is another program where now we are intuitively being guided to listen to certain podcasts. That's a fact.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's kind of the same thing when you take screenshots. So that was great. I'm really getting a picture of how does that help
the audiences. Yes, because I think the audience too, because I'm very practical as well. I'm very heady, but I'm also very cerebral too. So, I like to know how do you use the code. Now, I'm interested, and for our audience too. So in the news, which we all know has been owned by the same groups of people, now it's obviously breaking apart. So I do believe the white hats now are either
we had already been dead by now.
Yeah, they're letting them destroy themselves by now. Just let them kind of peter out, right? And I think also the reason, exactly, and the reason we need to have the friction news, as I call it, is because we need more people to still see how insane it looks, right?
Yeah, just like the speech the other night.
Oh my goodness, the speech. Okay, so in the news, usually at like 4:00 in the morning or something, in the news world, they get the speaking points where they all basically say the same thing. So
yeah.
So that's part of the programming, right? That is something that if you took what they say, you could put that into the Gematria.
Perfect example. And I encourage everyone to thank you for bringing that up. I want to encourage you all to watch the movie Wag the Dog.
Oh, such a great movie.
That explains what's really happening behind the scenes. And there's a trailer. You can look up the trailer real quick on YouTube or wherever. Just put in Wag the Dog movie trailer. And basically it's showing you Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro talking about how they manipulate the news in the back end. And literally technology is way ahead. They use green screens to create like you're in the war, somewhere and all that. Like, seriously, you can't make it up.
No.
I encourage everyone to watch that because it will pre-program their brain to realize that all of our entertainment was created to share one nook and cranny of the big puzzle piece. And it's just brilliant.
Nuts.
But when it comes to the news, to answer your question, is I encourage people, because this is what literally, here's how I like to explain it. Keep me on track though with the titles, because I like to explain this to people so that they can get the big picture, because we've all lived in this bubble world. Now, when you have good versus evil and you're trying to protect the people as best as you can, without knowing what's really happening. Everyone would be like this, to be like
Right,
they wouldn't be able to take it. But I want you to think of how many spy movies and shows there are. There's literally
they
thousands.
Dominate. They dominate.
Yes, there's
they
a reason, because you will see people, everyday looking people, homeless people, you know, people sitting on a park bench and so forth. There's really military agents and good guys and bad guys out there doing this without us knowing, to protect the people. I know the audience, that sounds crazy, but it's very, very true, because they've been protecting us all along without us even knowing. But my point is think about that so you can expand your brain, because you're going to find out it's true. So the best codes that I find, and I can already tell you for the record, I'm going to tell everyone, I told you so 155. That's one of my favorite codes. And not in a mean way, but in a fun way, because Team Jesus is like, you got to throw some humor in there, Sharon, because we got to keep them entertained. But I go with the titles at the bottom, because most people, the way their brains are programmed is they just listen to what the person is saying, right? But what I do is I look at the codes, and you're getting all the juicy stuff at the bottom. Like, I've already decoded so many things that are going to be happening here in Utah. Like, it will blow your mind.
What do you mean the codes at the bottom? What does that mean?
So, okay. So when you see titles at the bottom of the screen and something, you're like,
in the news, you mean?
Yes.
Like this, news, like a ticker going by?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I encourage people to pause it or take a screenshot. I take screenshots because I know if it doesn't resonate right then and there, I know I'm supposed to revisit it at some point. So that's another tip I had mentioned, but write down what it says. And actually, technology is so far ahead now. Pisses me off too, because like literally they're searching your phones of everything you're doing, and if anyone goes to their pictures, you can type in butterfly and they think, oh no, that's just to make it easier for me. It's like, no, like that's why technology was created, so they could track you easier. But I digress. So just when I take a screenshot of that title, like the ticker at the bottom, you can literally copy and paste it. You click on it and it will highlight the words. You pop it right into Gematria and boom. You start looking at the simple, and you'll start seeing a script. Like I've already noticed here in Utah, as I mentioned, not even less than 2 months ago, there was a big local news on Fox 13. That is a white hat operation, because a lot of people that are connected. Now, I want people to keep an open mind. When you hear the word Q, it kind of triggers a lot of people. I want to encourage you, please be open-minded, because you'll be way ahead of the game. That is part of the military movement. And when I bring it up to people that are skeptical, I'm like, I'm just going to encourage you. Go look at JFK's burial site and tell me what you see on the burial site. It's a giant Q. Oh, yeah.
Really? A Q on his burial site?
I mean, it's in our face. It's in your face 165. Yes.
Oh my God, I want to see that.
That's what they're trying to show people, but they're trying to show people who are deeply programmed and want to refuse it.
So quick side note, sidebar. So do you think that Trump is Q plus?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Q is basically everyone, but mostly Q is our military.
So Q is in the military intel, and then Q plus is Trump, right? They're all
connected. That's how I
mean, I feel that way too.
Yes, but
they're intersected.
But here's the way. That's a great way to explain it. Is we know pedo language. People have been learning pedo language, like hot dogs and pasta and pizza and all that, right? But this is how the white hats communicate in Gematria.
That's right.
Does that make sense? So when people learn it, see, I'm more into the entertainment, like I said, which includes your commercials, TV shows, your titles and your news and so forth. But a lot of my friends were at the Q rallies, and they're going to find out there's a lot of important people there. And Trump always pointed to them. And I'm going to start.
Did he really do those signs? Like sometimes at his rallies,
all the time. He's showing who is paying attention. He does it all the time now.
Does it all the time.
You've been hearing it more in the news, but when you understand, he does these movements, and that is just like, think Masons. They got all their hands and so do the white hats, and he's just basically
doing it. Well, one thing I find is really funny, and I'm sure you appreciate, because I do watch a lot of mainstream news to see what's happening, to see what's being changing and what's shifting. And one thing I noticed when he's in the Oval Office talking to the open press now, he drops some stuff that we would only see on the Q posts.
Yes.
Did he just say that?
Yes, that's what's happening. And literally the best part is sometimes, like, I think I told you, one of my good friends back in New Hampshire, she randomly messaged me like a couple months ago. It was just kind of weird. She's like, I don't understand all this Q stuff. And basically in her own words, she's like, you're kind of crazy. Yeah. And then I found out she unfriended me and I'm like, good, block, bye. I got no time for this, because I'm looking for the people who take this serious, that know there's more to life, and that it's been in our face all along. But the Q posts are, I don't do a lot of the Q posts because many of them have already been done, but they're date stamped and so forth. Even though the year may not be right, they already dropped the code years prior. So when people learn how to do it, the Q Alert app, you just type in, it's brilliant. And it all aligns, because they did a Q post on his speech the other night. And what was brilliant is the
word for word sometimes.
Okay. So for the record, Sarah, I have to say this real quick so your audience will know that Sharon said so, because you're going to find out. That was central casting. President Trump always talks about central casting. And he basically, he says it. He goes, you're in the biggest military movie ever. So people need to be open-minded. This guy's brilliant. But when he was doing his speech the other day, I could read right through it. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all masked. And they're also paying attention when I heard about the mask at first, I'm like, okay, that sounds a little crazy, but that's why we're taught special effects behind the scenes. And they were all holding these signs, and it was like so scripted. And when he was saying certain phrases, he's pointing to them. And you have to listen between the lines, because he's like, your time's up, because we're not going to talk about the stuff that would scare people. Did you hear those comments? And he's like pointing, and none of them, even when that boy with cancer was up, they're showing you, are you deeply programmed that people don't even realize we're seeing our politicians fight. If our politicians on both sides are fighting, no wonder why the people are fighting. So us as the people, we need to come together and start helping the people and the animals and everything that are suffering. That's the only way this world is going to work. But I digress.
So just one more thing to that, because I think that would be really great for people to go and put into the Gematria as well, is when that is all being scripted, in essence, right? Is that happening because the insanity with these leftist lunatics, swearing so much, like the decorum?
I know.
Even today, when they were censuring Al Green in Congress, they actually, because it was voted to censure him, these leftist lunatics literally got on the floor of did you see it? And they all started singing Kumbaya or We Shall Overcome nonsense. And so is that to wake the rest of the people up, or is it mixed with some people?
Duality.
It's the duality, right? Yeah.
You can do it from either side. People that are awake and see, oh my gosh.
And then the actors, right?
They're showing our children how to act, how to be assholes, how to be disrespectful, and so forth. That's what they're really showing when you look at it on the flip side.
Because you know what it reminds me of, and then we can move on, but it reminds me of, even in CIA, sleepers, the sleepers sometimes don't even know they're sleepers in CIA. That movie Salt with Angelina Jolie is a perfect example of that. She didn't even know she was a trained assassin until her teacher comes back and she has to interview him, and he basically wakes her up. She is actually the sleeper, and she's CIA.
So yes, I gotta revisit. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was on the other day, and it was really worth watching again, because that's how they do it. They wait. That's why the sleepers are waking up, right? So I believe these leftist lunatics, they actually have people who are the actors or the sleepers or whatever, and then they have real people who really believe that nonsense, and then they have people who are pretending, and you'll never know who's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
You won't know. So I think in that Congress speech, I do believe like there was the central casting, and then you have to put real people in that believe that bullshit.
Oh
right?
my God. Yes, and there's masks that literally they're seeing who's paying attention. And we've talked about this. When Michelle Obama went up at the Democratic convention, she had a necklace and a lot of people zoomed in on it. It said Mike, you know.
Yes, the necklace.
We're
Big old Mike.
You know, they're seeing who's paying attention. He's got like this whole mask thing. If people go and search
his ear.
I know, you can see if you look at the right angle, there's holes in the ears.
Okay, so you were going to go back to the Salt movie, I believe. You said you had some thoughts around that?
Yes, there is a new movie. Now, this may be a little over people's heads, but I'm going to encourage you to be open to being open, because when I started learning about there really are clones, because think of all the thousands of movies, they got clones and bots and all this. And I'm like, oh, and but I had my own experience, as I mentioned to you off record before, about what happened to me and seeing people's eyes do some funky stuff and all that. That's when I was a believer. I'm like, I can't make this shit up. But there is a new movie that's in the theaters right now. It's called Companion. Now, the David Wilcoxes and you know, the Simon Parks and a lot of those people that have been, and even Dolores Cannon and so forth, they've been telling you for a long time that there really are, I know, but it's part of the movie, you know what I mean? There really are clones. There really are non-player characters, people where I couldn't even grasp my head. That means a non-player character that they don't even know, like you said in the movie Salt. She's like, she didn't even know. But what I think this is a great white hat movie because they did it simply and straight to the point. And basically what it was is, and I'm not going to ruin the movie, but I'll explain bits and pieces. I won't tell the people the end. But it was about this woman that, you know, maybe like in her 20s, she met this guy at the grocery store and they all fell in love and so forth. And he's just the best thing. And they go on this trip with some friends to this guy who's some Russian guy who has his own private lake and there's no one around. So it's all woodsy and so forth. So anyhow, I'm going to set the tone because I'm like, wow, this is really simple and it gets right to the point. And what it means is some people don't even know that they're non-player characters. And yes, I know that sounds crazy. I felt the same way. But what it was about was her boyfriend ended up slipping a knife into her and not into her, in her pocket. And so she went to the little private beach and the owner he was an older guy. And long story short, she comes back and she's got blood all over her. And she's like, he was trying to rape me, which he was getting fresh. And the whole point is he literally sat her down. He goes, you're not even human. She's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you're not a human being. And she's like, you're crazy. And literally he pulls out his phone, like with an app. And he's like, watch, I'll show you. Just think about like all the programs, like people when they have, you know, they have a house in another state and they're able to do all that. That's what he was doing. And he goes, watch. And he pulls up his app and then literally he brings the drag line down to like almost zero. And she went, boom.
Oh my gosh.
It was trippy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this how it really works? What we find and what we're told is a lot of these movies are created to share truth. Because if you're going to show truth and you're only going to use the news from the left or the right, you're still going to have that division. But everyone can relate to their entertainment and their programs so that everyone is already pre-programmed with the sayings and so forth. So they're going to bring together one beautiful, great movie. You're going to have drama. You're going to have violence. You're going to have horror. They came up with horror because people are really doing this horrific stuff like the movie Saw. These people are sick, you know?
Yeah,
so
no,
I get really
so
passionate about it. But the point is that movie does a great explanation. And they called them companion bots. So like the person that owned the bot and the person that didn't know they were the bot at first, it's like they were a perfect, it was like algorithms. They picked the perfect mate, you know, kind of like what pre-program, like they do on your matchmaking apps. That's kind of like what it was. So I'm like, that's genius. So I'm not going to tell the ending, but she finally realized, she's like, oh my gosh.
No, yeah, I've seen a few different shows like that too. There was also a program in England, actually started in England first, and then they brought it to America, called Humans. And that was they were robots that looked very real, and they would be brought into the home, and then it's really about the AI having consciousness, and it's very complicated and it's so wild.
That's why they make movies about it.
That's exactly right. And it is quite sad. I mean, based on Companion and others like it, Humans, I would love to go and decode all of that stuff. Oh my gosh. So I had a question about sort of what we're seeing now in terms of the coding and how it connects to what we're seeing unfold. Obviously, we are going through a transition time. So we're going to see a little bit of the chaos. Yes, the Black Cats are going to do the chaos because they don't want to lose the war. Obviously, that's a given. But also changing a system, it's going to require us to get a little uncomfortable because there's no transition that is so smooth. It's going to be a little bumpy, right?
Correct. Yep.
What I am surprised, I think it's more of a statement than a question, and I'd love to get your reflections on that. What I'm finding really interesting, and tell me how you feel about this, is even people who are awake, people I love and I know, without the gematria and the Q piece, they're not feeling as confident as I feel about what we're seeing unfold. Have you found that as well?
Yes. Yes. I'm glad you said that, because honestly, we're being told that learning gematria and learning how to decode is the missing link so that everyone can learn it, because when they learn it, they're just going to see it. They won't be able to deny it. They'll see the connections and they'll be like, how did I not know about this? You know, like it's kind of cool, because you think of all the teenagers, they're already gaming and so forth. Like they like those superhero movies and all that. Those are all based off of real people and represent someone. I mean, it's going to be so cool. That's how it's going to flip. And people will be like, oh my gosh. But then everyone's going to be able, this is what I love about it, is everyone is going to be able to start sharing their decodes. So it's not, you know, I tell people, stop with following all of these spiritual leaders and this and that. Like, start now. You have your own discernment. Stop putting people on a pedestal and just get out there and run with it. And I think it's going to be amazing. Like certain people are going to love, you know, like the superhero stuff. Some people are going to like the horror movies. Some people are going to like the cartoon stuff. Some, you know what I mean? And then we all bring it together and put it together like one giant puzzle.
Yeah, it is. It is really interesting. And I'm wondering if some people, the reason people usually put things off because they think it's going to require so much of them, you know, that they turn off because they're like, I'm not a coder.
I wasn't either.
Right.
So I'm a perfect example, because like I said, after I went through menopause, my brain worked a lot slower on the corporate, let's just say the corporate thing. But I love what you just said, though, that yes, it's going to be that missing link, because how else do you tell the people that we have been in a spiritual war this whole time?
Yeah.
And they didn't recognize it.
No, they don't.
Through your decoding. And the only reason why entertainment was created was to distract the people so that they would not recognize that they are in modern day enslavement. God did not build us to work 2 to 3 jobs just to pay the bills. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, we were never meant for this kind of suffering. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed that I'm sort of gravitating to share more is I am interested in, I do believe I was a general in past life. I do believe
I can see that.
Yeah, because I tend to gravitate towards military strategy. Even though I've never been in the military, I wouldn't want to go into the military, but I respect warfare, and not that I want it, but I think
you have the mentality to
I
understand.
have the strategy. Yeah, it's the strategies that I've been fascinated by. My husband too, and I read a lot of like war strategy books. I've listened to, like, you know, the 33 strategies of war, and I think that's Robert Greene. And I've obviously read The Art of War, but I'm really connected to it in somehow, so I can see the 40,000-foot view of a lot of things when I'm looking at it. It's very, very complex. And I think what's interesting now with some of the truthers that are kind of, they always have an opinion about, oh, Trump didn't do this, or this one didn't do that, or that one, and oh, he thought he was going to do this, and how come he's not taking care of that, and how come she's not taking care of this? And I'm like, geez, just bag it off a little bit. And,
right?
Right. And I think, right, I mean, oh.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I don't know if you share this, but I'm thinking that this is really the first time the veils of warfare have come down that get the public to see, in a way, because they just never knew how dark and complex it is, and how absolutely brutal it is. And you literally have to make decisions that are maybe two of the worst decisions, and then you'll have to make a decision on that, right? The least amount of damage, save the most amount of people. I mean, these are Sophie Choi's kind of decisions that have to be made. What do you feel about that? Because that's why I'm so disappointed in a way. But if
Sarah,
you know, anyway, yeah. Ugh.
I'm so glad that you just said that, because honestly, I think of, well, one, we've all been told that are awakened that we're all going to know someone that is connected to the bad and the good. All of us. It's in every city and state all over the world. It's going to freak people out. But I want to take a moment real quick to thank a lot of the people that are working behind the scenes, because it's way bigger. It's just, again, think of the giant spy movie. It's happening under our feet, and we don't know who they are, but they're doing this to save us. And when I think about, it could have gone really, really bad with that stuff and other things, and the Obamacare, you know, like what they were planning to do with those camps and all that. I mean, people, if they want, they can go do their research. It's out there for public on, but you know where I'm going with that. But my point is I think about this from a masterpiece level, and what people that are still sleeping don't realize is how, now throughout time, though, think about it throughout time. It's not just about us. This has been going on, you know, like we were talking about burning the witches, and like they don't
hundreds,
want
thousands of years.
And that's another label. That's the exact label. They don't want people to know that they already have the power within, and the gift, the laminin protein, to use your Christ-like DNA and all that. That's why they laughed at it. And that's why Satan's team was jacking off when they watched people say that, because in reality, they're telling you, you really do have it. You just are locked in the box and you can't get out. But I think of just, you know, between that and so many people that passed, I think of Auschwitz. I think of all of this. I think of the spiritual warfare of how they're telling your kids to think about being transgender when they can't change their socks, and so early, and all these labels, and creating the groups, and you didn't even realize they were already creating groups. Like, this is so much bigger. And I think of the way that they're doing it. And ever since President Trump got in office, and how quickly he is working. And he told us in advance, he said that there will be a peaceful transition of power. And look what he's doing. And I'm very thankful for him, Melania, and, you know, everyone behind the scenes, because they're saving our children.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids living in this world. If it was going to continue the way they were doing it, I'd be like,
I think the people, and again, I know I stick on the truthers a lot, because I think that I hold them more accountable in a way, because the other ones are just,
you just can't.
So, so there's I think the truth is that I hold more accountable, because the ones who are sort of posting online, not all of them, some of them, changing on a whim because it's not going how exactly they wanted it to go, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, do you have any idea what would have happened if we didn't win?
Oh gosh,
You wouldn't even be able to say that.
I know.
I mean, it is and I actually believe a lot of the truthers are also in the psyop. I actually do believe that a lot of them, because I've noticed that some truthers, they can't even say Trump without saying, well, I don't like everything about him. Like they have to qualify. Like, why do you keep qualifying one man? Do you do that for every other historical figure that we've had who have actually done evil things? Like they can't, because so that just shows that they're also still in the psyop. Because
in the program.
They're in the program. Like, why do you have to always qualify? Well, I just, because of the way he did that or who did that. Why are you doing that? If you say you're awake, why would you even do that?
I agree. And I'm so glad you brought that up though, because I got to be honest, I've got a few friends out here in Utah in the spiritual community that did not like Trump at all. Until finally, it was just one of that one friend that was like, just take a look at this and see, see how it feels. And a few of them were like, they voted for Obama and all that before. And they're like, I can't believe that once, like one friend in particular, she's like, I was such a crazy Mad Lib. And I hate to use that, but like, think of the Mad Lib. See how it all connects, the words and filling in the blanks and all that. But she's like, I can't believe it. She goes, I didn't even see it here. I thought that I was all about the environment because she loved it. And she's like, and then I find out it was a Ponzi scheme and it's just a way to filter money into all of their programs to, funnel money everywhere. And she's like, and she just loves President Trump now. She's like, it just makes sense because what they're saying, and they keep mocking. And here's the thing, what I've learned is over the years when people have posted things, do you think we want to post stuff that sounds crazy online? Like we're using our minds, but on their end, their minds are being controlled and being told how to act. Like, look at that Greta Thunberg and all that. I'm like, you literally put a freaking
she's MK Ultra. Yeah.
I'm like, that's the dumbest thing.
And her parents too. They're all operatives. I mean, they were programmed in too.
Yeah, but you get what I'm saying. They're monkey see, monkey do, and they can't break out of that train of thought.
Well,
they're
and
acting like Karens.
And that's also why Trump and some of the people in his cabinet, like people are getting all triggered over RFK and stuff. Yeah, I said, you got to understand, we're in a war. And you think that Trump can speak to just you? Right. He's not just speaking to just you. He's speaking to his enemies. He's speaking to double speak. I mean, it's all war strategy. So sometimes, again, because we've been in such a long programming, you have to brain interrupt the programming. You have to disrupt it by saying things that are surprising, shocking, double speak. That's part of war strategy too.
And duality.
Duality, right? So yeah, I'm sure, and I said this to somebody the other day, I am sure he doesn't necessarily always like to say what he has to say because he's like, but he has to, because he has to trip. Like it's tripping the wire, right? To get it out of the matrix, to get it out of the programming, to wake people up and go, but he said that, and he said this, and so there's a confusion phase that you have to go through to break away, right? And so as we're wrapping up here, we've got about 10 minutes, and I do want to give you some time to also talk about the amazing things you're doing now. But before we wrap up, and then I'll close out the show afterwards. But what would you like for the audience to, if there was a few things you would say about Gematria and breaking away from the illusions, what would you encourage them to do if they wanted to step into this?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. One, I want them to think outside the box, that look at what they're on all the time. Their phones, a computer. You're constantly looking at the TV. Everywhere you look, I mean, these cameras that are installed. There's a movie I encourage every single person to watch, and it did not get a lot of airplay, which I can see why. It's called The Circle with Tom Hanks. It did not get a lot. It's loosely based on, so he's like loosely based on being a Mark Zuckerberg and creating social media. And they were playing the whole thing of like, we're trying to make you safe and all that. So we take things down so you don't see it and all that. I highly recommend it. But think of, if you can already be using your programs, think outside the box of how much time am I spending around people now, organically, like in person? There's not a lot. They think that texting and all that, that is the demise of humankind, is using AI. We don't want to use AI to manipulate our brains and to program our brains. I encourage everyone to think outside the box, that the Gematria is the missing link, so that they just expand their mind. And once they start practicing it, they will see exactly what I had mentioned in their own unique, beautiful way. Just like God made each and every one of us unique. He made us each stand out and be different than someone else. And that's exactly what this world wanted people to do. The evil is to literally all look the same, all talk the same.
The Borg.
Exactly. I'm like, why don't you want to be different? Because I've been different my whole life. And I feel like the people that have felt that their entire lives, Gematria will cater to them. But it's really kind of more of a little bit of a fun aspect to really go back and do your homework and see what was in front of us this whole time, because we all have the same tools. Does that kind of explain it a little bit?
I love it. I love it. So what I'm going to do is, let me put this back up again. So gematrix.org. Remember, you go in there, you find phrases on shows, news,
local
recurring
titles.
phrases, look at titles, look at signs in the background, sometimes you have to look around the subject to get some clues. And then you put that in words only, no numerals.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like Sharon had mentioned, is maybe do a little cheat sheet, like a timetables, one A equals 1, B, and then keep that there so that it's easier. Then you just look and then you can type it all in, and then it'll start spitting out some interesting codes that you can decipher and do with
Wonderful.
it. Right? Is that a sort of little sum up?
Absolutely. And there are definitely, the other thing is, there are other apps that can break it down even further, but I don't want to get into that. I feel
that's
like
advanced.
Advanced math and all that. I'm like, ever since menopause, this brain don't work that way anymore. But I want to encourage people to go what resonates with them, like what caters to them. And mine just happens to be decoding all the things we've already talked about.
I love that. I love that.
The Q post. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as we finish here, and then I'm going to thank you at the end, but why don't you tell us, we've got a few minutes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and the beautiful humanitarian work that you're doing, and I'll let you have the floor and you go for it. And then we'll wrap up here in a few minutes.
Yeah. You just tell me if I'm cutting close. That would be great. So thank you, everyone. I hope that you learned something valuable and you keep an open mind and start dabbling in it. I do want to encourage you. I just created a new group on Facebook called Divine Numbers and Theories. And it's a place where everyone can talk openly about all the woohoo and spirituality. And it's not all about news. It's about the things that you're like, does anyone else think about this? And the thing that I love too is people can start decoding their local area and their news, because when people really get this down to a science, they're going to be the people to explain it to their own area. I mean, it's genius. But I want to encourage them to check that out. I just recently started my new Divine Numbers and Theories YouTube channel. I'm also on Telegram, and I'm going to stick with those platforms for now. But I'd love to encourage you to like and subscribe, because I have over 30 interviews that I've been keeping on the download. You'll know my story. And I'm also going to be interviewing a lot of people that were at the Central Casting rallies. I was very, very honored to interview 𝐒𝐸𝐞. Many people in the truther community know about her. She was recently pardoned by President Trump because she was thrown in jail. When you find out the charges and so forth, you're just going to be like, I mean, it's clear as day. And she really would love it if people could get the word out, because I just did that interview with her over a week ago, and there's still a few people from January 6th being abused and beaten in jail. This is not a joke. So please go take a look. But also, a couple years ago, the Holy Spirit spoke through me. And I'll be uploading some videos in the near future when I get time to it. But I want to encourage everyone to go look at it, because it was my actual boom, boom, boom. Here are my downloads. This was a message from the Holy Spirit. I looked at this world and I said, everyone's suffering. The epidemic is that people are too busy, that they don't believe that they can help people. I moved from New Hampshire, which was just a small town. And when I moved out to Utah, it hit me in the face like a ton of bricks. And I'm going to try not to cry, because, I mean, just driving around in Salt Lake, you just see homeless people, everyone. And I'm like, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. So I hope people won't be like, ooh, like, where the fuck is the money going? Where are our tax dollars going? Now it's all coming out, where people are finding out that literally in this audit, they've already found enough to give a home to every homeless veteran in the country. And that there's enough that they already found that families aren't going to go without eating. I mean, we all know people, you just don't know who they are, because we've been taught and programmed to have pride and not to. It's just messed up. So anyhow, the Holy Spirit spoke through me, and I came up with a concept, a legitimate concept, where we can bring the entire world together. We can all start pitching in 5 hours a month. That's it. That's the sweet spot that I found people feel like they can help with. The homeless that are suffering. The homeless veterans out here is up to like 40% in Utah now. The animal shelters, they're not putting in the news. I've talked to people running animal shelters. Half of them are going to be closing down. The economy is so bad, people cannot afford their pets anymore. The no-kill shelters, they're euthanizing them. Their bodies are stacking up. It's time to freaking step up, because the epidemic is people not helping and thinking that our government's going to take care of it. It's never going to work that way. It's up to us to create a whole new world. And what I created was communitythinkingtank.com. It's not a think tank where there's one leader. It's thinking, where people can come up with solutions and start helping in their area of expertise or something they're passionate about. And honestly, God already told me it's the way. And what I mean by that is that, and this is a perfect example. So many people want to help with, North Carolina, the fires in California and so forth. But unfortunately, there's a lot of evil loser faces out there that create scams. So now there's a fear of people not even knowing if the money that they're sending, because they do that in our government already, and everyday people. But my point is people can create their own community thinking tank where everyone has life and job skills and list the problems that they see. And it's a place where people on both sides can put their political differences aside and start coming up with solutions and start finding the others. I mean, the people that are awakened, they're going to be the driving force and allow people that treated us like garbage, like, you don't know what you're talking about and so forth. We're putting that all aside. We're here to help them. And it's a judgment-free zone. And what I want people to think about is, how do you connect the entire world? Well, one, community thinking tanks are not a business. It's going to be the new news. You know how there's already community pages in every city and state, people start them and people chime in and so forth. It's kind of like that, but 20 steps higher. And what I mean is that Anyone can open their own community thinking tank in their own city and state. And I encourage everyone to do it, because here's what's unique about it. I did an interview with a woman over the summer, and she goes, this is exactly what Simon Parks wanted to do. And she goes, but he was making it a business. And she's like, you're giving the power to the people. I'm like, exactly. That's the way it should be. So people can utilize their own community thinking tanks and using their life skills and their job skills. And people literally can start interviewing one another like, hey, we're working over here doing this, you know, oh, I'm going to pick up these clothes for a donation. That's how you create a positive environment. Oh, we've got people that like are tired of growing, you know, mowing their lawn. Oh, we've got like 30 people in town that will go in people's backyards. They don't have to go through their home. They can start growing gardens so that there's no family that is not fed, and so forth. It's like that. Teenagers can start their own community thinking tank where everyone thinks, and, you know, you get 3 members that can, you know, you can take donations. Think about this. You take donations and people will prove to you where that money is going. Not like these crazy Ponzi scheme bullshit that they're doing with the audits and all that. Sorry, I digress. But we're the news. People don't realize in your local news, you don't even hear about your own city anymore. Do you get what I'm saying? People create their own. Construction workers, they'll be like, hey, we're going to refurbish this old building that was shut. We're going to make apartments for the home. You get what I'm saying? And
absolutely.
the beautiful part is that if we all create community thinking tanks, people will know where to go. If they want to move somewhere, all they do is log on to a community thinking tank, because it's not a business. You get to know the vibe. You get to meet the people. And if there's one message that we could spread all over Mother Earth, we literally think of it like the evil Google, but it's a good thing, where whenever anyone's looking for an answer, they go to Google, right? Yeah. But what if we went to a community thinking tank and all it takes is one main post, and we could get a message and create handmade signs of peace and positivity and post it, just like I got the idea from the Oh God movie. I encourage everyone to watch those movies. It holds true to today. And we can be the change. And all it takes is 5 hours from each and every person. And it's a beautiful place to get your kids involved, that they can feel like they're a part of a community. And let's be honest, Sarah, we've all been hiding behind our freaking phones for how? Yeah, oh, it's 222.
Yeah.
222. Can't make that up, but you get
that's
what I'm saying.
That's why we have to get out into action. And yes,
that was really beautiful.
Are.
Thank you. And we're all really deep down inside, we're all really wanting to get those hugs in. I mean, people could create these and start meeting in their homes. All they do, it takes less than 10 minutes. You go to the Facebook Community Thinking Tank. We've got one going out here in Utah. We have one going on in Florida since all the storms and so forth. And that's what it's all about. And we're encouraging people to just create the group. Add your friends, boom, 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 and tell them to duplicate the process. And literally people can start getting together in their homes and just having fun and talking about this. That's it. It's simple. Don't overthink the process.
Thank you so much. That was really well laid out. And, you know what, we need to make things practical and easy, because people are overwhelmed and they just need to know, they need guidance, they need help. And we have to do this mindfully. So we're at the end of the show, guys. We're trying to get this wrapped up. First of all, I want to thank Sharon Kay.
Thank you, Sarah. I adore you. I'm so glad Courtney Allen hooked us up.
Oh my goodness, you were so gracious, and thank you for your time, and thank you for the knowledge that you shared. I think it's very exciting, and you're doing such beautiful work. You're a beautiful soul. I'm so glad that we're friends now. I'm so excited for us to do, you know, more shows together, and connecting on more, and maybe do some roundtables with some like-minded people that are really in this.
Yes, we've got to get going like we do with Courtney on Patriot Podcast. She's got a great show there as well.
She does. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and my beautiful special guest, Sharon. That's me. I'm Sarah.
I get
I'm
it.
Sarah.
You
So
need
I
to eat
wish
more
you
nuts.
well. I do. I need to eat more of my macadamias. So I wish you well wherever you are in the world. Please take care of each other. Keep your mind awake. Keep your body nourished. Keep your mind free of a lot of toxic company, if you know what I mean. And just be curious in the world. And we'll see you on the next one. Ciao, ciao. Bye, everybody.